Thanks so much for tuning in to watch The Ordinary Filmmaker. I've got some really exciting news about some new APS-C cameras coming out, and they come from credible and reliable sources. But first, let's go back in time a little bit. And Canon has already said that they're not planning on innovating or coming out with new products for the EF mount. Now, that means the EF and the EFS, but when pushed, well, we weren't able to get any clarification on whether that meant the EFM at all. And there has been plenty of talk on the internet from sites like Canon Rumors stating that Canon is looking at some sort of exit strategy or migration strategy away from the EFM. Their focus, 90% of all innovation and development in the camera line is going to be and has been on the R system. Now, if we go back to earlier last year, a lot of reports started coming out from Canon Rumors and other sites talking about Canon coming out with a mirrorless version of the 7D, and then other rumors talking about how Canon's going to transition their mirrorless, their DSLRs, their mirrorless, over to the R system and moving away from the EFM mount. And the latest rumor we had said we would get a camera that will be high-end to replace the 7D, which would more or less be a mirrorless version of the 7D Mark III, and then another camera which would be entry-level, and a camera that would sit somewhere in between, which would most likely be the successor to the Canon 90D. And I know what you're thinking. Well, isn't the M6 Mark II that replacement? Well, yes, but you see, the M6 Mark II isn't really a replacement of the 90D. It's more of that same camera in the EF mount, and as Canon has already said, their focus is going to be on the R system. So that's the latest rumor. Unfortunately, shortly after that, we got an announcement, or we got a rumor from Canon Rumors again, stating that, well, Canon is now just considering it. And that's the problem with rumors. A lot of these were what Canon Rumors would call a CR0 or CR1. They weren't really validated, and they weren't from known sources, but quite often, where there's smoke, there's fire. Well, today, Craig said that he got confirmation from a known source. It has been validated. It's a CR2, so that's quite credible, stating that an APS-C camera is coming out in 2022, and it's going to be the second half of 2022. So that means anywhere from June to December the 31st, and again, that's based on the availability of parts and whatnot. This rumor also talks about there being multiple cameras. There isn't just going to be one camera, although they didn't specify any real details that would help us understand whether it's going to be a replacement for the 7D Mark III, an entry-level camera, or a successor to the 90D. But here's my thoughts. The 90D came out about 2 years ago, so if Canon waits another year, that puts us right around this time frame. But if we look at the 7D Mark II and when that came out with, well, Canon's really due for a refresh. Now, Canon and Sony, based on the contraction of the camera market, are focusing on cameras and products that will basically help them generate more revenue. So I think that the first camera that's going to come out is going to be a successor to the 7D Mark II, a high-end APS-C camera. Now, in terms of megapixels, they didn't specify, but Craig expects that it's going to be somewhere between 28 and 32 megapixels, which is right in keeping with most APS-C cameras, unless we believe the rumor that the Panasonic, the Fuji X-H2 is going to have a 40 megapixel sensor. The 90D has right around 32 megapixels, so this seems to be quite in keeping. Now, other details about this new camera is that it's going to have, of course, the RF mount, it's the R system, and, well, the sensor, here's a nice improvement. And I think all future cameras coming out from Canon for the R system are going to be back illuminated. So the sensor is going to be a back illuminated sensor. It's going to be an APS-C, and this looks to be quite amazing. So I'm pretty excited by this. I've always liked the 90D personally. The 7D really wasn't interesting enough for me. Once I kind of looked at the 70 or the 90D, for me the next place was really going into full frame. Now, if Canon comes out with both the 7D Mark III or a mirrorless version of the successor of the 7D Mark II, which I call the 7D Mark III, well, there's going to be a lot of demand for that, I'm pretty sure. And of course, a lot of the 90D, 80D, 70D, each of those cameras were one of the top selling cameras. So I would expect, and I don't know what they're going to call this, I would expect that the successor to the 90D is going to sell very, very well. Now, if we follow Canon's nomenclature, we can probably predict what these cameras are going to be called. So we have the R5 and the R6. The R5 is the most capable. The R6 is a little less capable. And I think 2 spots below that are going to be available for other, I think there's 2 more spots for full frame cameras. I think we're going to have a replacement to the Canon EOS RP. And instead of getting an RP designation, I think it's going to get a number. And I think we're going to get a camera somewhere between that camera and the R6. So they would take up the R7 and R8. And then we're down into APS-Cs. Now what Canon might choose to do, instead of going like the R9, they might go with the R10 or the R20, just like they did with the 90D and other cameras. It's very much possible. We just don't know. But as far as full frame goes, they've already come up with a nomenclature. We've got the R5, we got the R3, which sits above that. Then we got the R6, and the R1 is likely coming out next year as well. So this is very, very exciting news. Once again, this is a CR2 from Canon Rumors, so that means he's got it from a known source. He's been able to validate the information. And one more thing that's really, really important, please go ahead and punch that subscribe button and like. It's what really helps encourage me to get out and produce these videos, because it's what feeds into YouTube's algorithm to promote this channel and help this channel grow. And when I see my channel growing, it really encourages me to get out there and produce more content. But that's it for today. I do have another video coming out later this week, a review of the Colbert, not the talk show host, the Colbert CL100. For whatever reason, I keep mixing up those 2 names, Colbert. It's just somewhere in my head that I keep doing that. But that video should be coming out later this week. I'm going to pick a day where there isn't a lot of news, so it's not going to be competing for news. But long story short, I really like it. It's a really great addition to my studio. Now, what do you guys think? Are you really interested in an APS-C R system camera? If you do own an EFM mount, yes, this is a bit of an issue for some of you. The one problem with the EFM mount is there is no migration path anywhere in Canon's ecosystem. Now, if you're lucky enough to buy the EFM to EF adapter and you've been purchasing EF glass, well, the good news is you can bring that glass over to whatever APS-C camera you have. Canon isn't going to be coming out with a completely different mount for those APS-C R system cameras. And I got to tell you, when I moved to the R5, I only bought 1 lens, and I was able to use that EF to R system adapter to put on my 50mm lens, the 1.2 EF, and adapt a whole bunch of other lenses too. So that was really, really helpful. And the nice thing about EF glass, it doesn't lock you into that crop mode, and you can shoot 4K 120 no problem. If you're using EFS glass, it locks you into that 4K, or locks you into that crop mode. There is no 4K HQ, and there are some other issues. So if you're going to be porting glass over, you really want to focus on your EF glass and not your EFS. Now, why is it I always seem to talk really fast? I speed up. I know, because I'm excited. I'm trying to slow it down a little bit, but I am truly excited by these cameras. I thought 2020 was going to be a great year for cameras. It definitely was. I was expecting more. It didn't happen, so I was expecting 2021 to be a really good year. And really, we've seen very little up to now. So I guess that's just shaping up that 2022 is going to be a really good camera year. We're going to get a lot of really amazing announcements. As I mentioned before, there's a significant amount of holes in Canon's lineup for their APS-C and full frame cameras, especially when you're looking at the R system. You got the R3, the R5, and the R6. And the R6 is $2,500. There's nothing really below that. Well, yes, the EOS R and the RP, but they're so old, and even when they came out, they were pretty well outdated. The EOS R was just a mirrorless version of the 5D Mark IV, which came out some 3 years earlier. So we're really in need of some entry-level consumer cameras, like the 90D, which was a top-selling camera. We need to see an R system camera for that one. I would really expect that would be one of the cameras they focus on, as well as the successor to the 7D Mark II. All right, I notice I'm starting to repeat myself, so that's it for now. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you again soon.